The Miami Dolphins get a huge win on Monday Night Football, but it's probably too little too late for their playoff chances. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today, as I am every Tuesday, by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to look at some of the final wild card spots in the AFC and the NFC and talk about which teams we believe will secure them. But first, we got to talk about two teams fighting for a wild card spot that played on Monday Night Football as the Miami Dolphins go into LA and take one from the Los Angeles Rams. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Tonight's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Use the promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Lauren, the Miami Dolphins get a big win here, but I feel like it's a little too late for the Dolphins to make that playoff push.
Yeah, with Tua having missed so much time and they lost so many games, yes, they're playing better now, and they're probably going to play better the rest of the year. But when you already have 6 losses, you almost have to go undefeated at this point to sneak into the playoffs. Or maybe you can count on 1 loss, but that's a really tall task for any team.
Yeah, 100%. With how competitive the AFC is, it makes it even more difficult. My guy Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins talked about the win.
Miami Dolphins are off the schneid with a 23-15 victory over the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football, potentially kicking this season back into gear. I'm Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins, and Miami came into this game in primetime with their season on life support, started fast with an impressive opening drive, going down just their second possession to start a game this season and scoring a touchdown. In the middle of the game, had a bit of a lull for Miami, but down the stretch, the Dolphins managed to do something they have not done for much of this season, which is play complementary football. Critical third down conversions for the Dolphins, holding the Rams to field goals in the red zone instead of touchdowns, recovering an onside kick at the end of the game. And the Dolphins now move to 3-6 with 2 consecutive home games against teams with just a few wins of their own under their own belt, and the Raiders and the Patriots looming up next. What will this season hold that's been filled with ups and downs? We'll find out next week as the Dolphins host the Raiders.
Now, it's obvious that the Miami Dolphins are a totally different team with Tua out at quarterback. I think that is pretty clear. He's a massive upgrade from Tyler Huntley or Skylar Thompson or the guys that they were trying to survive with early in the year. We saw it against the Bills last week. I mean, they had a very competitive game, lose 30-27 on a late field goal from Tyler Bass. And I said it last week when we were breaking down the games, like, you know, you can't poo-poo the Bills winning by only 3 late in the game because this Dolphins team is not the Dolphins team that their record says. But again, I think that even with winnable games ahead of them, you look at some of the other teams in the AFC and it's probably too big of a hill to climb out of. Do you think, let's say the Dolphins do win both those games coming up and they go to 5-6, at that point, do you think you would feel more optimistic that they could run the table?
Not really, because the next game after that is on the road at Green Bay, cold weather game Thursday night. Is that Thanksgiving too, I think?
Yeah.
In Lambeau Field, plus they end the season at Cleveland and at New York, the Jets. Not that those are great teams, but I don't know that I trust this Dolphins team on the road in cold weather in December and January. And the way Kyle said it there, like something this defense hasn't done all year is making stops in the red zone. Like I don't necessarily trust that the defense is going to be able to do that every week. They played better this week, and teams will have ups and down weeks, but all it takes is like 1 or 2 bad weeks again from this Dolphins defense, and they're right back into, not contending at all.
Yeah, the margin for error is just so slim for them now with the position that they're in. And you look at the rest of the AFC, which we're getting ready to do, and I just think, again, it's too little too late for the Dolphins. The Rams here, though, they completely squander a good opportunity. I mean, they had a great chance to make a play. And we'll go to Locked On Rams to talk about how big of a letdown this loss is at home.
Tonight's massive missed opportunity could cost the Rams a playoff berth. Too many miscues. The Rams shot themselves in the foot all night. A Stafford interception, a Kyren Williams fumble. You got Kyren Williams sticking his finger in the ear holes of Dolphins players' helmets. A lot of fans wanted Bo Limmer in there. Well, Bo Limmer had a key false start that pushed the Rams' 52-yard field goal attempt that would have been a make by Josh McCarty to 57. He misses that. Then just over 6 minutes to play, Matthew Stafford doesn't get the football to Kyren Williams. Would have walked into the end zone. That would have cut the Dolphins' lead to 5 with just over 6 minutes to play. The Rams settle for the field goal, and they don't get in the end zone for the first time all season. They settle for field goals all night, and they really wasted a really great defensive effort by this Rams D. Give Weaver credit for the Dolphins. He had a great game plan against the Rams, and they had them flummoxed all night long. But a major missed opportunity for the Rams that might look back at tonight and say that this is the loss that might have cost them a playoff berth.
It's just crazy to me that, the Rams have everything back. They have Cooper Kupp. They have Puka Nacua. And it's the offense for the Rams that really lets them down in a big spot. A Sean McVay-led team, it's kind of hard to believe that. But, I mean, at this point at 4-5, the Rams are in a really tough spot in the NFC, especially in the wild card race. I think their best chance is to hope that, the 49ers falter and the Cardinals falter, and they can find a way to take the NFC West, because the wild card, it's just simply going to be too difficult to do at 4-5.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The division is kind of their only shot, but I feel like it's not a long shot. I mean, it's
right.
It's not an uphill. I mean, it's an uphill battle, but I don't think it's out of the question for them at all. Like this to me felt like more of an uncharacteristic Rams performance. I mean, he mentioned the fumble and the interception. Like,
right.
You don't get a lot of that from Matthew Stafford, and you don't have a lot of games where Matthew Stafford's throwing 46 times either. I mean, they really count on him to throw, and like what didn't feel like Rams football. And I just feel like with McVay and some of the experience on this team, I just trust them a little bit more that, when you get late in the season, or if they find a way to get in the playoffs, like they can lean on a lot of that, and you feel like they could make a little bit of noise, that they can still find a way to figure it out if San Francisco doesn't make that step forward, and if Arizona slows down a little bit. They still got divisional games to catch up on here.
Yeah, they could make it, but at some point in time, yes, it may be possible, and yes, they have avenues to do it, but can you trust the team to actually do that? I don't think you can with the state of this offensive line, and even with getting some guys back, it just wasn't a good enough performance up front, and that's a bit of a shock with a Dolphins front that is good, but it's not great. You would just have expected better from the Rams. But with that being said, again, it's going to be difficult because these wild card races in both conferences are so difficult. We're going to look at who we trust at the bottom of the AFC wild card and NFC wild card. It's Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Pro Football GM app. Hey, NFL fans, remember our great partner, the Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back, and they've added a new amazing game mode that I need to tell you about. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, hiring a coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during the games as well. If you already have the app installed, make sure to do an update. If you don't have it installed, make sure to download the app right now. It's a must-have for football fans. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free. It has no ads. It's 100% playable offline. You can play as you go, when you want, where you want. And there's a special offer for Locked On NFL fans. Use the promo code Locked On NFL in all caps inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or just look it up in the App Store. It's the Ultimate Pro Football GM app. Start your dynasty today. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action in the second half of the season with America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, $5 winner. Get you $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can go to FanDuel, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about that Monday Night Football matchup. The Dolphins, probably too little too late. The Rams, I'm not sure if I trust them to turn things around in the NFC West, and sticking in the AFC wild card. The reason that I think it's too little too late for the Miami Dolphins is just how good the AFC wild card picture is. So, Lauren, you look at the top 6 seeds in the AFC. You have the Chiefs, 9-0. The Bills, 8-2. The Steelers, 7-2. The Texans, 6-4. The Ravens, 7-3 is the number 1 wild card team. The Chargers, 6-3 is the number 2 wild card team. I think all of those 6 teams make it. I mean, we would need to see a major collapse by one of those teams for them to not make it. Probably the Chargers are the only team I could see that happening. The Texans are going to win the AFC South. The Steelers are going to make the playoffs. The Bills are going to win the AFC East. The Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. The Ravens and Steelers may flip-flop at some point, but there's no way, in my opinion, that either of those teams miss the playoffs entirely. So maybe the Chargers at 6-3, but really you're looking at that final wild card spot. You have the Denver Broncos at 5-5. You have the Indianapolis Colts at 4-6. You have the Bengals at 4-6. Now the Dolphins are 3-6. They have the same amount of losses as the Colts and the Bengals. But for me, I'm just looking at the Bengals, Colts, and the Broncos here. Those are the only 3 teams that I really believe in. And the Bengals are really in a tough spot. And my guys from Locked On Bengals talked about that.
But the Ravens at 5 in the AFC, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Bengals' opponent this week, at 6 in the AFC at 6-3. The Denver Broncos at 7 at 5-5, and they just lost one of those plot armor games, getting a field goal blocked against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Indianapolis Colts ahead of the Bengals by tiebreaker based on win percentage in conference games at 8 right now, and the Bengals at 9. The Jets right behind the Bengals at 3-7 at 10, but the way you most easily distill this, the most likely path is that one team makes that last wild card spot between the Denver Broncos, Indianapolis Colts, and Cincinnati Bengals.
So, Lauren, I ask you this, and I have my answer ready to go. Out of the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Indianapolis Colts, which of those 3 teams do you think gets the final wild card spot?
If I was going to bet my money on it, I think the smart money's on Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. But right. I do think I look at the Indianapolis Colts as maybe having the easiest path to get there. And with a veteran quarterback like Joe Flacco, I mean, they still gonna play the Jets, Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jaguars. Those could all easily be wins. The only hard game left is the Lions, really. I mean, maybe the Broncos being a wild card team can push them for a spot there, but a lot of those other teams are really struggling. So the Colts could just sort of luck their way in, while the Bengals still have to play the Steelers twice, and they got the Chargers, and the Bengals can beat each other up this next coming week. Like, yes. I don't think the Colts are the best team of those 3, but they might just be able to kind of waltz their way in and look around going, oh, hey, I guess we'll take this wild card spot if you guys don't want it.
100%. I mean, obviously, I think the Bengals are the most talented, and it pains me to say what I'm about to say, Lauren, because I really do hate the Denver Broncos, but I'm going to have to say the Denver Broncos. I mean, they play the Atlanta Falcons this week at home. I think they're winning that game. Like, the Denver Broncos are a better, more consistent team than the Atlanta Falcons, even though they don't have as much talent. Then they're at the Las Vegas Raiders, win. Monday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns, win. Like you just mentioned, the Colts and the Broncos play. If those teams played this week, I would take the Broncos to win that game. Then they play at the Chargers. They play at the Bengals, which gives them a great opportunity. I don't think they win at the Chargers, but I think the Broncos could beat the Bengals with their defense and the way that they play, and the Bengals' propensity to turn over the football and be silly. And then they finish week 18 with the Kansas City Chiefs. And who knows, maybe the Chiefs are resting Patrick Mahomes and resting Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. Like, I think if you're looking just schedule-wise, I agree with you that the Colts have a good one. I agree with you that the Bengals are the most talented team. But for me, I'm actually going to go with the Denver Broncos to make that final playoff spot, even though it pains me to say it.
I can definitely see it happening. I think it's gonna so much is gonna depend on the volatility of Bo Nix. He's settling in nicely right now, and not that, that he's been super volatile, but any rookie quarterback is gonna have some ups and downs in that stretch. I just wonder if things are going great now, and then teams figure something out, and maybe there's a couple of slow weeks of Bo Nix, and the margin of error being that tight between those teams, could that be what separates them and leaves them out? We'll see. I mean, Sean Payton's getting a lot out of him right now.
Absolutely. It's funny. You talked about the Indianapolis Colts, who maybe have the friendliest schedule going forward. But I got to tell you, my guy Jake and my guy Zach from Locked On Colts, they do not seem to be very optimistic.
The elephant in the room the past several weeks now has been the quarterback play. Doesn't matter if it's been Anthony Richardson. Doesn't matter if it's been Joe Flacco. But certainly Flacco threw some potatoes out there today. Their first drive, pick six. So Flacco was 26 of 35 today, 272 yards, a couple touchdowns, and 3 interceptions, 4 turnovers overall. He, in the past 2 games alone, since he's been crowned the savior of the offense, 6 turnovers, just 2 offensive touchdowns, and 2 losses in very winnable games to some of the league's better teams.
So I guess I just want to ask this. At this point, let's say the Colts lose again this week coming up. They play at the New York Jets. I do believe it's their next game on the schedule here in week 11. Then they play the Detroit Lions. If the Colts were to lose to the Jets and then lose to the Lions, do you think they should go back to Anthony Richardson?
I feel like if you do go back to him, you want to go back against a team like the New England Patriots that can be more of a soft landing for him. But it does depend on what Joe Flacco does in that game. Like, yes, he's had some turnovers and stuff, but we saw last season in Cleveland, the late season, Joe Flacco found a way to make things connect. And you drop a backup quarterback in the starting lineup. What was it, a week ago? Or has he played 1 or 2 games since they officially benched Anthony Richardson?
2.
It takes some time to kind of get back in the rhythm. So I'm not ready to fully bail on Joe Flacco just yet, but certainly there's a strong case to be made that, hey, maybe Richardson has the higher ceiling there if Flacco's ceiling is a little bit more limited.
And to me, it comes back to what we talked about when he was benched. Like, I just thought it was absurd because, at the end of the day, finding out what you have in Anthony Richardson is way more important than whatever you're going to do with Joe Flacco. And if you're losing these games anyway and you're having turnovers and the offense can't function, just what are we doing here? What is the upside of the move that we're making? It's very perplexing. So I would say if they go out and lose to the Jets, and then, of course, they're going to lose to the Lions, you have Patriots, you have a bye week, you have Broncos, you have Titans, you have Giants, you have Jags. Give Anthony Richardson back the reins for the last 5 weeks of the season, and hopefully he builds some confidence going forward. But I got to tell you, the AFC is an interesting one because there are multiple teams that could realistically end up getting the spot. The NFC may be already over. And Lauren, we're going to talk about your team in this mix as well. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets, period. They have the best features in the industry, and they just got a brand new feature that makes Game Time even better called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier because Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've purchased football, basketball, baseball, concert tickets on Game Time, again, because they have the best features. Of course, Game Time Picks, which we just talked about, but they have all-in pricing if you toggle on the feature. So the price that you see for your tickets is the price that you pay. You get a panoramic view from your seat. It's such a great feature. I can barely say it. A panoramic view from your seat so you know what you're going to be looking at when you sit down. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about that Monday Night Football game and the implications for both teams going forward. Talked about what we might see out of the AFC wild card battle. And honestly, it looks like there's just one spot up for grabs. But looking at the NFC, there may not be any spots up for grabs when it comes to the wild cards, at least. Before we get into it, I want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen. Make sure that you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barbershop. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But Lauren, looking at the NFC, right now, the Lions, number 1, 8-1. The Eagles, number 2, 7-2. The Falcons, number 3, 6-4. The Cardinals, number 4, 6-4. And then the wild cards. You have the Vikings at 7-2. The Commanders at 7-3. The Packers at 6-3. Right on the bubble, you have the San Francisco 49ers at 5-4. Your Chicago Bears at 4-5. The Seattle Seahawks at 4-5. The Rams, who just lost on Monday Night Football, at 4-5. The Buccaneers at 4-6, coming off their loss at home against San Francisco. Looking at those teams, San Francisco, Rams, Bears, Seattle, Tampa, do you think that any of them have a chance to get one of these wild card spots away from the Vikings, Commanders, or Packers?
I certainly don't think it's going to be the Chicago Bears. We can talk about that in a moment here. But
Fair
the
enough.
one that jumps out to me surprisingly is Tampa Bay, only because not to go back to the schedule thing again, but they got a bye week this week, and then they play 6 or 7 teams where only one of them is maybe a playoff team in the Chargers. But they got Giants, Panthers, Raiders, win. Then at the Chargers, okay, maybe a loss, but then Cowboys, Panthers, Saints, win.
Ooh.
Like they should have at least 6 more wins on their schedule that gets them to 10. Right. And if they could beat the Chargers, they'd be an 11-win team. But even a 10-win team, like even a tough NFC, they could find their way into the playoffs somehow, some way, without Chris Godwin and with an injured in Mike Evans in this process. But I don't see the Commanders or the Packers making a big drop off to open up a wild card spot for them. It would have to take the Vikings having more Sam Darnold implosions, but they've even still found ways to hold on.
Yeah, and I agree with you fully there. And you talk about the schedule for the Buccaneers. Look at the schedule for the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know if the Buccaneers could get one of those wild card spots, but I think they could certainly catch up to the Atlanta Falcons, who the Falcons coming off a loss against the New Orleans Saints at the Denver Broncos. They could lose that game. That's a tough game in Denver. It's always hard to play in Denver. Then they play the Los Angeles Chargers, a physical team that could absolutely beat the Atlanta Falcons. Then they're on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, that's tough. And then, of course, you have some easy games in 3 of their last 4. You have at Raiders, Giants, at the Commanders, which could be a loss, and then the Panthers in Week 18. But at Commanders, Minnesota, Chargers, Broncos, that could be 4 more losses for the Atlanta Falcons. And they're 6-4 right now. That's 8. They could easily go 9-8. And if you see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers make that kind of push like you're talking about with their schedule, I 100% think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers could overtake the Atlanta Falcons here at the end. But I mean, I really, just looking at it, I really don't know. I really don't know if any of these wildcard teams is going to lose. I think you're looking at the NFC South, what we just talked about, maybe a division catch-up, and then San Francisco, 5-4, maybe Seattle, 4-5, catching the Arizona Cardinals. I would really say right now, there is absolutely no way it's not going to happen that the Vikings, the Commanders, the Packers, or, the Eagles in there too, if the Commanders catch back up. Those are going to be the wild card teams out of the Eagles, the Vikings, the Commanders, and Packers. Like, you're going to get your 3 wild card teams out of those 4. There are no open wild card spots in the NFC, in my opinion.
Yeah, if I was betting on it, that's how I would go too. Like, all that's up for grabs is who actually wins those divisions. But we kind of know what teams are going to end up slotting into those wild card spots. That whoever loses the NFC South or the NFC West will not be a wild card team, and then whoever loses the NFC North and the NFC East will be the wild card teams that fill in there then. And like, it's going to be exciting to see those teams kind of clash quite a bit towards the end of the season. But if Atlanta finds a way to blow it, I mean, that's going to be a huge disaster for everything they've gone all in on this season. I mean, that's going to be embarrassing. That's going to be tough for like GM Terry Fontenot and even Raheem Morris a little bit. I think they'll survive it, but it's really going to be a stain on their resumes.
Yeah, they're going to be instant hot seat at the start of next season if things don't start going well. I mean, bringing in Justin Simmons, trading for Matthew Judon, bringing in Kirk Cousins on the big deal. Like, they have way too much. It's just the same old if they don't make it. They have too much talent to not be a playoff team. And that's why a lot of people had them making the playoffs before the season.
Well, thank God they drafted Michael Penix in the first round, so they'd be ready to make the playoffs this year, man. It's really going to put him over the top.
Yeah, way to use a first-round pick on a guy who may not play for 3 seasons. Just crazy work out there, crazy work. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. Again, get subscribed, stay subscribed for year-round free NFL content. Check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with Tony Wiggins in the barber shop. That's going to do it for me, your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, and my co-host Lauren Cox. We're here with you every single Tuesday. But as I tell you guys every single time, stay safe out there.